This is the second of our 6-part video series to explore the maximum suite strategy. As we know, there's a housing crisis that's creating a lot of challenges. However, this problem, along with policy changes, creates an opportunity for you to generate wealth and create more housing. So in this video, we're going to dive into the second letter in the wealth formula. This is the letter E, which stands for the existing home. We'll discuss why it's critical to pay attention to this aspect of the property, so let's dive right in. Welcome back. Thanks for watching. I'm Andy from W.E.A.L.T.H Editions, where we help investors and homeowners create more housing and generate wealth. We really appreciate if you can take a second to hit the like button and please subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already so that we can get more content out. You can also read a more detailed version of this video in our blog post at sweeteditions.com. Okay, so the second letter in the wealth formula as part of the max suite strategy is the letter E, and it stands for the existing house. We may be excited about adding in a garden suite or possibly even tearing down an old house and building a bunch of new units, but that might not make sense. Many clients approach me with the idea of demolishing an old house and then building up to 3 or 4 new units based on newer municipal policy. Now that might work in some instances, but in many cases it doesn't. A developer mentor of mine once told me that in many small and mid-tier markets, the house on a property comprises approximately 75% of its overall value, while the land represents around 25%. So if this were true, then a house on a $500,000 property would be worth around $375,000, while the land is worth $125,000. Now, if you were to tear down the house, you'll have to recoup the $375,000 in value somewhere along your project, and that can be very difficult, if not impossible. Additionally, it's very difficult to obtain financing for a property for the average homeowner or small investor if your plan is to demolish an existing home. So for these reasons, our preference would be to keep the existing house and maximize its value by adding more suites first before building anything new. So there are a bunch of questions we like to ask regarding the existing house. The questions include, should it be a single unit in the existing structure? Should it be converted to multi-units, and if so, how many? And how should it be divided? This depends on the type of house, how many units are allowed, and the approach for a single-story bungalow will be different than that of a 2-story home, and that itself will be different from, say, a century home. So let's look at some examples that are possible with the existing house based on 2, 3, and even 4 units. Now, of course, what you can do will depend on whether the city or town for your property has these policies in place. We discussed how to determine that in our first video, which you can check out in the description below. So let's first look at 2 units. The most common would be a single-story bungalow where the main floor is a single unit and the basement is a second unit. You may have a century home where the main unit is on the first floor and the basement, and the second suite is on the second and third floor. You may have a home where you perform a vertical split with one side as the main unit and the other side as a second unit. Now let's look at 3 units. You may have a 2-story home where one unit is in the basement, one unit is on the main floor, and the last unit is on the second floor. Perhaps you have a large single-story bungalow where you have the main unit on the first floor and 2 smaller units in the basement. In some instances, you may have a large attached garage that can be converted to a 3rd unit. Finally, let's look at the possibility of converting an existing house to 4 units. If you have a large 3-story home with a basement as well, for 4 levels in total, then 4 individual 2-bedroom suites could be an ideal setup. We may even be able to convert a single-family bungalow into 4 units with a vertical fire separation, having 2 units on the first floor and 2 units in the basement. As a matter of fact, this is what we're currently designing for one of our clients in the city of Hamilton, which currently allows 4 units within the existing structure in the R1 zone. Another client that we're working with is also considering converting his existing 2-unit home into 4 units. In this case, there's a slight expansion of the existing home with a rear addition where the 3rd unit will be on the main floor of the addition and the 4th unit will be in the basement. So what we've described here are just a few examples of what can be done with the existing house of a property before any structures are built. Now, it's important to remember that even if you are permitted to do a certain number of units, it may not make sense to do so. It might be worthwhile to keep unit sizes larger in many cases due to a particular market and analyze what rent you can obtain versus the cost to build. For example, you may be permitted to convert a home as of right into 3 units, but you might get similar rents if it was a 2-unit home with larger suites. And instead, invest the extra funds into building a garden suite perhaps, or converting an existing detached garage. This is why it's important to have a good pro forma spreadsheet where you can punch in the numbers for different scenarios. That way you can compare apples to apples, and this is exactly what we do for each and every property we analyze for feasibility. Now, speaking of investing in garden suites and garage conversions, this segues us nicely into part 3 of the series, which is the A in the W.E.A.L.T.H formula. And the A stands for ancillary structures, which is a building that is detached from the main house. This would take the form of a detached accessory dwelling unit, commonly referred to as a garden suite, as well as a converted garage or laneway home. We'll get deeper into that topic in our next part of this series, so stay tuned for that video. In the meantime, make sure when you're analyzing a property, whether it's an existing property you own or one that you're considering purchasing, to look deep into the potential of what can be done to the existing home. You might be surprised on the value and cash flow that can be added. Now, if you haven't seen our first video on the W.E.A.L.T.H formula, check it out in the description below. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. To learn more about the Max Suite strategy, download our free guides at suiteadditions.com and get started. And if you enjoyed this video, here's another great one for you.